Okay, so up to this point, we've only been able to make one type of an object, and that is a full-size wall. Again, using Fortnite as a model, you can make different types of walls. Now, I particularly am not that fond of the interface they use for modifying the walls, and that is for a wall, you get a 3x3 grid, and you have to click on which ones you want to omit, and then it creates an object based on that size if there's a corresponding object. I really don't find that a great way to design, particularly if like a wall falls during mid-battle and you have to quickly put up a new one. Some people do, and that's great, but what I'd rather have is the ability just to cycle through the different types of walls rather than trying to clumsily make one. I know they're trying to give you the feel of construction, but I just don't think it works that well, and ultimately you're really not coming up with anything new on your own. It's a pre-existing object, so there's this illusion that somehow you came up with something new, but you really didn't. So might as well just show you from the beginning what objects you can make. Now, maybe you have to unlock a schematic or something so that you can create the different walls. That's whatever you want to do with that. But for our demonstration here, you're just going to be able to cycle through the different types of walls. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our wall object here, and we're going to drag it into our scene. So we're taking the prefab and dragging it into the scene. We're going to click on the cube because that's the actual object. And again, I already did the testing to make sure this works out right, so these numbers are not arbitrary. So we need to scale this vertically. So we'll put this at 6 because it will be roughly 2/3. Sorry about that. And we will put the position at -2 because you're pushing it down on the screen. Now what we can do is we can put the default wall here, slide it over, and you can see that indeed it does line up at the bottom. Might not be perfect, you might have to tweak it a little bit, but this gives you the methodology. So we can delete that the second wall. As far as this first wall, what we're going to do is we're going to rename it. We'll call this wall _ MED for medium. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take this and we're going to put this back into our asset area. Now you have two different ones. And we can delete the one from the scene. So now we've got wall and we've got wall medium. Just as the main camera object is aware of the wall here for block object, it needs to be aware of the new one as well. So if we come to player con, so there it is, block object. So again, you can tell the naming actually has some issues because I was thinking of just a single block when in fact we're going to be dealing with lots of different objects. So the naming should have been a little bit more meaningful. So we're going to add public transform block _ medium _ obj. I'm going to save that. So we come back to our camera object, and it looks kind of odd because this is the sequence in which the variables are set up, so it shows up down here rather than in sequence here. Really doesn't matter, it just depends what you feel is easier to look at. So we'll take that wall medium and put it there. So now we've created a new wall size, and the camera, which is working as the player object for the moment, is aware of it, so to speak. It's aware of it through this new variable. So now what we need to do is we need to give you the ability to navigate from the full-size wall to the medium wall. So I'm thinking the easiest way to do that will be using the scroll wheel. Again, for now, we're still using keyboard and mouse. At some later point, we'll look at using a game controller. So we're going to use the scroll wheel to scroll through the options, because eventually there's going to be more than just two. There's going to be maybe 5, 6, 7 different types of wall objects. So if we go back to our player con script, and what we're going to do is we're going to look for input, and it's going to be the scroll wheel. So, unsurprisingly, this is what it's going to look like. If input dot get axis, because it treats the scroll wheel like an axis. Mouse scroll wheel is greater than 0, then we want something to happen. First, we test to make sure this is working, since, like I said, when you're dealing with new functionality, new input, you want to make sure that it's working right. So debug.log scrolled up. So we save this, we run it, and when I scroll the scroll wheel, you should see the message appear down here. And there we go. I scrolled it, and we got the message. So great, it's working. So now what do we want to do? Now what we want to do is we want to actually turn this into navigation between the objects. So what we want to do is we want to change what the current focus is. So the current focus is going to be changed. It's going to be instantiated. It's going to, or should I say, it's going to be the instantiated version of the medium wall, and the wall that is currently there needs to get destroyed because we can't modify it. We need to actually get rid of it. So a few things going on there. So we'll take current focus object. We'll put this here. But what's going to be instantiated would be block underscore med underscore. And I think you can leave it like that. So let's just see if that works, that when I scroll the scroll wheel, we get the smaller object. So we'll press B for build, and now I'll scroll the scroll wheel. And as you can see, we now have the small wall. We just need the bigger one to disappear, which is actually quite easy. What we're going to do is we're just going to duplicate that scroll wheel command, but we're going to duplicate it here in the wall con script. Now, when we check for the scroll wheel here, we're changing the current focus. What we need to do is we need to make the current object to self-destruct. So how do we do that? I'm going to paste this in so I don't mess up the typing. So if input.getAccess mouse scroll wheel is greater than 0, again, that is identical to this here. What we're doing in here is what's different. In here, what we're going to do is we check again for a place status variable. If it is not equal to set, then destroy game object. That's how you destroy an object. Just destroy game object. So whatever object the script is attached to will be destroyed. So we'll save that. Now, just one slight problem with this. Not a big deal, but it's something we're going to want to clean up eventually, and that is right now, what's going to happen is when we run this, the object will instantiate. Say you toggle to a different material, and then you use the scroll wheel to go to the different object. So visually, what the player is seeing is a modification to the wall, but as we've already seen, what's actually happening is a whole new object is being instantiated. So there's nothing here that's capturing what the current selected material is, because what happens is this is saying whatever object is instantiated, okay, whichever one is in focus, just change the mat on that. Well, this, okay, these three are not actually storing that information anywhere else. So the object gets modified, you hit the scroll wheel, this object gets deleted, so it forgets, for want of a better term, that you changed the material. So you'll still be able to cycle through the materials on the new object, it's just that it won't remember. So if someone, say, goes to metal and then they hit the scroll wheel to change the size, it will revert back to wood, because again, this object gets instantiated, and when the object gets instantiated, it gets instantiated with the wood material. So it's not a big deal, more of a kind of, I guess you'd call that kind of a quality of life issue when it comes to gameplay, that it's not a big impact, it's just more of a nuisance. So they would just have to get in the habit of changing what object they want first, and then changing the material, rather than changing the material and then changing the object. It's not a big deal, but it's something that we can look at. It's something we can look at, and that maybe create a variable where we store something that tracks which the current material is. So what happens is, rather than just instantiating with wood as the default, it instantiate to whatever the most recently selected material was. So again, you would just have to create a new variable, and then when you change the material, that variable would be changed to, wood, stone, metal, that kind of thing. So it's minor, but let's see how it plays out. So we play this, we hit B for build, and then we hit the scroll wheel. And indeed, it looks like it shrinks, when in fact what we know happened is the previous one was deleted. And we can move around, and this can rotate, and we can hit the space, and it builds. And again, there's the full-size wall behind it. So definitely working as intended. But here's what I was talking about. So let's restart this. We hit B for build. Say we hit 3 for metal, and then we hit the scroll wheel. See what I mean? The material is lost. It's not a big deal, and I have no doubt there's probably games that don't take that into consideration, but that's just something that I wanted to mention to you, is that kind of expectation. They've selected a material, and then when they change the object, the material selection is lost. And the way that could be resolved, possibly in the next video, is, like I said, in the wallcon script, you'd create a new variable, call it current mat or something, and then when the number, when the number 1, 2, or 3 button is pressed, in addition to this, current mat would also be set. Current mat would have to be a static value. You'd want it to be independent of the object. Okay? And then when the new object gets instantiated, rather than instantiating with wood 30p mat, this would be the current mat variable. So you create a new current, a static variable, and that static variable would be here, and that static variable gets modified when you press 1, 2, or 3. So again, if you guys want to see it, let me know. I'll do a separate video for that, because like I said, this really isn't a glitch or a bug. It's more expectation. And Once the player realizes that a material is lost when they hit the scroll wheel, I don't think it's that big of a deal. So I think that should do it. If you have any questions, just let me know.